Very good evening, namaste, and welcome to Citti Media. I'm your host Sharan Sethi. Uttar Pradesh is going for elections, and every time it does, there is something very important that happens politically. Because at the end of the day, what Uttar Pradesh decides is eventually going to become the mandate for Lok Sabha eventually. And that is what we saw in 2017 and 2019, and that is what we are going to discuss this time too. Joining us today is an eminent bunch of panelists. Monika Verma, it's her first time on Citti Media. Abhishek Banerjee too, and Shantanu Gupta here has been on our platform before. Ladies and gentlemen, namaste. Thank you so much, and I hope all of you are safe. Especially because I've seen so many people just around me falling sick because of the new wave of COVID, and elections happening around that time is again a bigger concern. And I hope all of you are well. Hanji, you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah, I think when you said elections are happening and COVID, but I think Akhilesh Yadav has given on a lighter vein. Akhilesh Yadav has given a solution already. Only thing you have to do, you can do big rallies. Only thing you have to write virtual rally. If you've written that, that's fine. I'm sure you all know what I'm hinting to, right? Like 2 days back, when a couple of people joined his party, he got so excited. That he booked a big area, पूरा मंच बनाया उन्होंने, पूरी barricading करी, उसमें 15 लोग बिठा दिए. They all gave whatever speeches they want to give, and सामने बहुत सारे लोग सब टोपी झंडा लगा के. And when we went to the debates, TV debates, और पूछा कि ये क्या हुआ? हमें पता नहीं था इतने लोग आ जाएंगे. मतलब आपने पूरी बैरिकेडिंग लगा रखी है, आपके ऑफिस के अंदर कॉन्फ्रेंस रूम है, उसमें आप सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग के साथ कर लेते हैं. पूरा बैरिकेडिंग लगा के जैसे एक इवेंट होता है, उसमें सबके पास झंडा टोपी, इतने लोग अनायास झंडा टोपी लेके आ गए, बस बाहर बैठ रहे थे कि क्या अखिलेश यादव करेंगे, राइट. और उस पोस्टर में ऊपर लिखा है वर्चुअल रैली. मतलब देखिए, लोगों को बेवकूफ समझने की क्या हद है कि भाई ये वो है कि भाई मेरा मन है जो करूंगा, ऐसी ये सरकार चलाते थे, ऐसी ये रैली करते हैं. सो दैट वाज फन. सो मतलब ऐसे, दिस इज द पर्सन हु इज नॉट इवन डबल वैक्सीनेटेड, सिंगल वैक्सीनेटेड, राइट, who said vaccines is BJP की वैक्सीन है, impotency आ जाती है, all of that, right? So yeah, so ऐसा है कोरोना यूपी में.
But on a serious note, the Samajwadi Party is projected to at least double or triple its seats this time. So what does that say? Is there an anti-incumbency against the Yogi government, Shantanu ji, especially because you've also come out with the book? So maybe you can tell something in conjunction with that.
See, I'll just say 2-3 data points, and I'm sure readers can make their own conclusions. When Samajwadi Party made their full-fledged government, that's only happened one time, right? Full-fledged government means with full majority. That happened in 2012, where they got 224 seats, right? Baspa also made only majority government only once. Otherwise, they made a government with coalitions. So that time they got 207 seats. In both the cases, Baspa and Sapa got 30% vote share. Like 0.5% here and there, but 30% vote share, right? That's one data point your viewers should remember, that when everything fired for Baspa or Sapa, means their MY fired, their meme fired, everything fired, they formed governments with simple majority and with 30% vote share. Okay, fine. Now comes 2014, when BJP has upped the game quite a bit. 14, they reached 40% vote share. 17, they reached 42% vote share. 19, they reach almost 50% vote share, which is formidable, right? Like you can win even a presidential election in 50%. First past the poll system, you can win like 30-35 in a multi-party system, right? So, and in these elections, Sapa and Baspa has moved to 20-22. So now the gap is 22 and 40. An interesting part is that in all the opinion polls, my visit to almost 40 districts for writing my book, there is BJP is not shedding its vote. So it's not a vote for anti-incumbency. So if you have to beat BJP maybe lost, maybe gain 1 or 2% or maybe lost. So it will be around 40. So you have to get 45, 48 to win it. And which Sapa is not, Sapa may regain its peak from 22, it will become 30. Maybe with this joinings, maybe with some mohal, maybe some news value, maybe 2%, 1% more, so 31, 32. And largely the opinion polls are also saying the same, right? That the gap is still 6-7% in largely all the regions. And that will translate into at least a difference of 100 seats between. You are right, Sapa will improve. In fact, Sapa will, vote share wise, must be their best selection, their best performance, right? 32, 33. They never even cross 30. That's one. Seat wise, yeah. And Abhishek, you will, I'm sure, second this. From vote share to seat conversion, Sapa has the best record. And there's a reason to it, right? Reason to it, because they have this Muslim vote across seats. Every seat in UP has 15 to 35% of Muslim vote, different to different seats, right? So because of this committed Muslim vote, in whichever election they get it, so that's why their conversion is very good. The conversion is quite good. So even with 30%, 32% vote share and BJP in 40, they can touch 80 to 100. But to my understanding, there'll be easily a 100-seat gap. Still, what all is happening in the last 5 days have a lot of news value, but it doesn't have electoral value.
Right.
It has electoral value, but not to respect the way it's generating news.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Abhishek ji, would you like to add on to that, especially in the light of a lot of ministers, sitting ministers quitting the UP government? Some sections of the media are already saying that this is a clear indication that the government is not performing very well, but that is not true. Especially in the case of Bengal, we've seen that happen. There were a lot of defections to the BJP, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the BJP performed really well there.
Yeah, so you see, I feel that there are certain things in which the electorate has moved a little ahead of what I would call the political class, which includes both the political parties and the media to some extent. And one of the things that I've noticed in recent years, and it's not just limited to Uttar Pradesh or any state or even limited to BJP, BJP has also found itself on the wrong side of certain things here, that people are not responding to what I would call overt caste politics. I mean, caste is, of course, caste is a huge factor in India's elections. Everybody knows that. But what I would call is overt caste politics. I mean, in the sense that, somebody comes to you and says that, vote for me because I am from your caste. People generally don't seem to enjoy that anymore. Doesn't mean that, it's not there as the bedrock or something. For instance, even Akhilesh Yadav. I mean, of course, Yadavs are going to support Akhilesh Yadav. But they don't want to be told. They don't want to say. They don't want to believe in their hearts that they are voting for the guy because they want to find some other excuse. And what has happened in the last 4 or 5 days, we have seen, this is the sort of a throwback to the old politics, right? Is some Maurya guy quits and says, oh, you see, he's not respecting Maurya people. Then some Shakya guy quits and says, you see, he's not respecting Shakya people. I don't think people in India are responding to this politics anymore. And I'll give you several examples. I mean, and from both sides of the aisle. In Bengal, for instance, the BJP definitely tried to play more of a backward caste angle, backfired completely, didn't work at all. Then even in Bihar, at least, you would have seen one thing that I found was very interesting was the 2020 Bihar election. Because in that entire election, I did not see Tejasvi Yadav mention caste even once. And he did quite well in that election, if you remember. So, if you are in an election in Bihar and nobody is using the word caste, it means something has fundamentally changed inside the electorate. And I think Akhilesh was actually doing okay-ish previously in December when he was harping on bread and butter issues, ye nahi kiya, wo nahi kiya. He was raising. Now I think he has made a mistake because he has gone back into this thing of ye samaj ko itne ticket, is samaj ko samman nahi mila, us samaj ko samman nahi mila. This politics is really, I think it is failing, and it's not just failing in UP or Bihar, it is failing all across India. Even in Karnataka, you see you recently saw the local body polls, right? If you know anything about the politics of Karnataka, JDS is in total collapse because nobody wants to vote based on, he's a Gowda, I am a Gowda, so I will support only the Gowda. Nobody wants to do this anymore. So this politics
is more interesting is that this is sort of happening at a state assembly level and even at the municipal level, right?
Yes.
At a Lok Sabha level, it was generally seen that caste isn't such a big factor as compared to assembly elections. But what do you think enabled this? I ask you this especially not in light of what the BJP or other parties may have done in terms of economic progress or otherwise. But even if this is applicable to other political parties, there needs to be a fundamental change that is coming from somewhere. So, what do you attribute this to?
I think the society has changed. And this is what I said, that the society has moved ahead of the political class. And, people are talking about this and that person joining. If you think about Bihar 2015 elections, you can go back and check the news back then. It was like a one-way joining spree of netas joining from JDU and RJD towards BJP. But who won the election? People were not bothered. I think people have developed a certain amount of electoral intelligence and this thing that, 30 days are left before election, and 30 days before that, I realized that, he has not given my Samaj enough respect, so I have quit. So everybody in my caste will vote for this politics as it's really doomed because people just don't want to believe this anymore. And that's just because the underlying society has changed. Or is society where you cannot do that politics and, even the Ayaram Gayaram thing. And I'll tell you, it's not just today that the Iram Gairam thing is not paying off. 2014, at the peak of Modi wave, in Maharashtra, there was assembly election. And just before the assembly election, a lot of people, they joined BJP en masse, thinking that, BJP is the winning horse now, Modi wave is at its peak. If you go and see the results of 2014 Maharashtra election, you will see the reason BJP narrowly missed the majority is because all the turncoats lost. The turncoats did horribly. So our politics has been moving away from this IRAP, GAYARAP, vote katwa culture. I will put a vote katwa and then everybody in my group will go and vote for that. This vote katwa, IRAP, GAYARAP, overt caste politics. This politics, people have moved beyond it and people are not so easily fooled.
Let me get back to you in a minute, but Monika ji, if you were to summarize how you would see the last 5 years of Yogi Adityanath's administration, how would that be? What would be the pluses and the minuses, and what do you think the government should keep in mind going forward?
Mm. I think as far as the pluses of Yogi administration is concerned, first of all, as a woman, I think law and order has considerably improved. So I think in 2017, I was on a visit to Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, where the seat of the power is. And happily, I could notice that, everywhere in Lucknow, things had changed so much. So we used to own a property somewhere in Lucknow, and my mom had given me a elaborate, list of instructions that it won't be safe for you to go alone. Things might not work in your favor. You can't roam around alone at night. I'm giving a very anecdotal example, but I think, these are certain things that Yogi has completely changed on the ground. Having my cousins, having really young cousins, college going students, and they narrate me their experience, how Uttar Pradesh has changed. So one very good thing, we can put forth when it comes to the achievement of Yogi administration is the improvement in law and order. I think 1,500 crore rupees have been taken back from the mafia. This is the amount that the government has recovered. Also, if you look at how many big gangsters have been put behind the bars or they have been shot down in encounters, I think that's a good achievement, because as a chief minister, there is a certain degree of requirement that you should be able to instill fear in the minds and the hearts of the goons. So I think there Yogi Adityanath has succeeded a lot. Secondly, I think a good example of Yogi Adityanath's administration would be, just pick any project, whether it is a metro or it is medical colleges or it's, so many development projects have come up in Uttar Pradesh in the last 5 years. And trust me, if I go through the list, it will take the entire, your entire time will be taken in that time. But just look at the Kanpur metro project, look at the airports coming up in Jaipur. And as a strategic affairs expert, just look at the BrahMos missile unit, which is coming up in Lucknow. So imagine the UP defense corridor is doing fantastically well. Philippines has signed up with India to get some of the BrahMos missiles. And, if the chief minister is not very serious about these projects, trust me, on the ground, it's very difficult to execute these projects. So I think that's a very good thing. Another scheme which is quite close to my heart would be the one district, one product, where, the chief minister is trying to promote handicrafts, the rural economy, by associating every district with one product. So I think that's a very good example. And we also have a degree medical college coming up in almost every district. This is also in the plans. If we look at the brute stats, look at just the way economics has improved under under Yogi Adityanath in Uttar Pradesh. So, detractors will definitely say that, employment has increased, or, they'll use. So if you torture data enough, you can always twist it in whatever way you want. But just look at the truth of it. Uttar Pradesh economy, it used to be, I think, fifth largest when Sapa was in power. And right now, I think it's almost second largest economy in the country. So I think even in the face of a pandemic, and that too COVID with such a huge population, when the international media was going to the town, literally printing news about how bad it is going to be, how many people are going to die due to COVID in UP, and how the economy is going to suffer. This is completely a turnaround story where Uttar Pradesh has completely surprised everyone, and we actually see, these stories don't come out that much in media, but we actually see change on ground. Since you also
Right.
asked me if there are certain problems, I think as someone who has spoken to a couple of people, one issue with Yogi Adityanath as a person is that he is an excellent leader. He's an excellent, chief minister. But when it comes to real politics, something that people on the ground, the quintessential neta, that is something that he lacks. So there's a problem that, I keep on hearing stories from the babus in UP that how they and Yogi Adityanath are not on the same page. So I think, keeping the bureaucracy into change, making sure all these babus are working towards your cause is something which is an art, which every chief minister must know. But this is one problem with the Yogi administration. Secondly, I would slightly disagree with what Abhishek ji said, that caste is not important. I won't say slightly disagree. I disagree a lot, because I was working on the ground in 2014 Lok Sabha elections. I was working with a political party whose name I don't want to take right now, but I worked with one of the member of parliaments from Mathura. And trust me, on ground, what I notice is, no matter how much would you like this to believe that, things have changed on ground, caste is not important. Caste is really important in UP even right now. Look at Western Uttar Pradesh. Jats on one hand are trying to, so Rashtriya Logal is trying to, make sure that Jats vote for them. But any miscommunication can actually, in fact, if they slightly appease to the Muslim vote bank, then the Jats get angry. And the reason is very solid. We all witnessed what happened in the Muzaffarnagar riots.
Right.
So for everything, Uttar Pradesh remains a sort of a mixed place where there is a large chunk of the hinterland dynamics at work, and also the developed dynamics at work. So Yogi has been very, very good in making sure that the development dynamics are taken care of. But as far as making sure that that leher or that wave, or that
Understood.
Hindutva
Right.
ideology and that solidarity in the name of being Hindu and caste taking a backseat,
Thank you. Points
that is
very well
something.
noted. I'll come back to you in a minute, Monika ji. Thank you. Shantanu ji, you wanted to add something, but I think there is a lot of truth to what Monika ji also says, because the discussion right now is also about how the SC votes are going to be divided, and that's essentially has become the part of the discussion in Uttar Pradesh, right? So caste as as an element in electoral politics still cannot be discarded away, is what I think both of us are trying to say.
See, I think what Abhishek said and what I understood, I think he did not say that caste is no matter factor. I think what he said, that people don't want to blatantly say that I'm voting for you because you're a Yadav, right? They want some other layer. At times, this layer is maybe just to look a little good that I'm not voting for caste, and that time this layer is real, right? I'm telling you why. See, we all know that Mandal politics started when it started, right? After VP Singh, right? And these parties are largely like the production happened and started in these parties then, right?
Yeah.
Sapa, Baspa, RLD, RJD all came up there and they started forming governments, right? BJP, and what is the crux of this Mandal politics? That vote me because you are a Yadav, vote me because you are a Dalit, vote me because you are a Gauda, vote me because you are X, right? And then these smaller parties, regional parties, who gained some ground in JP movement also, but yeah, now they found further ground. Now BJP tried to counter that with the Kamandal politics. What was the Kamandal politics? That you vote like a Hindu, don't vote like a Jat or a Tyagi or a Gupta or whatever, right? Which sometimes they gained, sometimes they did not, right? Like both the parties kept on winning in some local elections in multiple states. Now, what happened in 2014, and I think Monika ji told her experience in 2014 in Mathura, but what phenomena, I think what I'm going to tell is post 2014 until now. There is one more category. See, to my mind, voters' mind is a multivariable equation, right? We can simplify, it's not either or. It has a X, Y, Z, A, B, C. We can say just what takes more in his mind, what takes less, right? So caste is surely takes some portion. His identity as a Hindu surely also takes a portion. So at times he votes as a Jat, at times he votes as a Hindu. Only thing, can BJP increase that feeling of voting as a Hindu rather than a Jat? That is one question. The third element, which has become very important in the last 7 years, is the beneficiary vote bank. And see, now you will say, oh, no, this is not the first government. Benefits are being delivered even in past. But what has happened, the scale and the integrity of delivery is phenomenal in last 5 years. The numbers are just mind-blowing, right? The numbers are not like 1.5 times, 2 times. They're 8 times, 10 times, 15 times. Be it 2.5 lakh toilets, be it 2.5 crore toilets, be it 1.5 crore gas connection, 1.5 crore bijli connection, 40 lakh houses, multiple things. When I went, Sharan, to a lot of districts, almost 30, 40 districts, for researching my book, whenever I went to any village, people have shown me, लल्ला ये देखो ये मोदी जी का एसएमएस आया 2000 रुपए है, लल्ला ये देखो 800 रुपए है, ये 1000 रुपए है, because all these DBTs get an SMS, right? They were showing this is happening, and they were saying Modi ji's, Yogi ji's name interchangeably multiple times, right? So I think the hardest critic of Modi and Yogi will also agree that the efficiency's delivery is not improved. Improved is not the word, right? First time it's happening, right? It's like transform. And because this is so phenomenal, at least for initial years, till the time it's become a norm, it will create a vote bank. Because people are very demanding. They are very dil mange more type. So they will not keep voting you for good electricity. Because Delhi mein electricity aati hai, mota mota pata hai sabko. To abhi to 1 ghanta kyun jati hai, 15 minute kyun jati hai? They will graduate to that, and that's a very good thing. That people are graduate to a better things. अभी भी हम मतलब 2022 में हम वो बिजली क्यों नहीं है, सड़क क्यों नहीं बनी है, उसी पे स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं, which is not like rocket science, right? So ये 3 कंपोनेंट है मेरे ख्याल से. कास्ट का एलिमेंट है, not gone, but people want कि मुझे कुछ और भी मिलना चाहिए. मैं यादव को तो वोट करूंगा, but he should not be blatantly stupid. He can't say virtual rally and do a rally. ना इतना भी नहीं है. मतलब don't consider me such a big fool कि मैं virtual rally लिखूंगा कर दूंगा. आप बोलेंगे बीजेपी की वैक्सीन है, आप बोलेंगे इससे impotency आ जाती है, and I'll vote for you. No, you have to give me something else, right? That something else is many times a Hindu card. And card, I think, is a little loose word. Like, see, my life as an identity has a lot of things. My life, me being a Hindu, is not just some sidey thing, right? Like the way I'm born and brought up, the way my marriage happened, the way I'm taking care of my kids has a huge bearing of I being a Hindu, right? So if someone is catering to my identity, it's not Hindutva or Hindu card, right? I will feel connected to it, that this is the party who's not teasing my gods. This is the party for him. Ram is not imaginary. अयोध्या क्यों पॉपुलर होता था पहले? अयोध्या पॉपुलर होता था अभिषेक भाई कि आज हाई कोर्ट की हियरिंग है, आज दंगे हो सकते हैं अयोध्या. आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट का सेकंड हियरिंग है, आज दंगे हो सकते हैं. आज क्यों फेमस है? आज 7 लाख दिए जले हैं, गिनीज बुक ऑफ वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड बनेगा. आज कोरिया की फर्स्ट लेडी आ रही है, पूरा अयोध्या सज रहा है. आज अयोध्या से फेमस है. पीपल लाइक दैट टू हैपन कि भाई आप मेरे राम की नगरी में, अगर आपने किसी ने टेंट में वो राम जी देखे हैं, you will get choked. You will get choked and you will say, no man, no. You want to hit someone hard after that. No man. In my country, in a city, he's in a random tent. What is this happening in this my country? And there are some. I have never seen even the best of the airports. 5 जगह checking होती है अंदर जाने के लिए. वो बैरिकेड जब लगे थे, अब तो वहां पे एक छोटे मंदिर में एस्टैब्लिश कर दिया गया है. So जब आप और लोग गए हैं, लाखों लोग ने वो टेंट में देखा है. When they feel कि now there is a grand temple coming up, right? They will connect to it. इसको हिंदू कार्ड नहीं बोलूंगा मैं. This is not Hindu card. That's I think loose term. So ये सब है. तो तीनों एलिमेंट है. कास्ट एलिमेंट है, उनकी आइडेंटिटी एज ए हिंदू एलिमेंट है, और लाभार्थी, बेनिफिशियरी, वोट बैंक, बिकॉज इट ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, दैट्स आल्सो वोट बैंक. इन सब का मिक्स में ही वोट जाएगा मुझे लगता है.
I think it makes a lot of sense because before, say 2014, there was a bifurcation. Ki BJP used to only talk about Ram Mandir when it comes to Uttar Pradesh and Lok Sabha. That they used to sway away a lot of their own votes in the name of Ram Mandir, in the name of construction of Ram Mandir. But now you see the BJP is also talking about building an X number of highways and constructing a lot of projects, and at the same time talking about the reconstruction of Ram Mandir as well. So Abhishek ji, do you see this change in the way in which UP politics is itself perceived? Because a lot of the critiques have also been proven wrong in terms of what the Yogi government has been accused of.
Yeah, so I think that just what Shantanu interpreted absolutely correctly. That I think what is happening. So there are, I mean, of course, Mandal versus Kamandal. What is really happening is that people are getting a little. There's a bit of stigma now. It's not like people are caste is not a factor. It's a huge factor. In fact, it's the biggest factor. But the point is that there is a little bit of stigma associated to now saying that I'm voting for X, Y, and Z person because he belongs to my caste. They will say, no, 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 that's because he has done this and that. They don't want to say that. Whereas on the other hand, on the communal side, it's actually gone the other way. The stigma of saying that, this, you will see nowadays nobody even uses the word communal party. When was the last time you heard this term communal party? Because this stigma of saying that communal has completely disappeared. So people are now, so it's like what is really happening is that there are two forces, right? The mandal identity is going downwards, that people don't want to say that I'm voting in terms of caste. But there is less and less stigma associated to saying that, I'm a Hindu and therefore I'm thinking like a Hindu. People are becoming more outspoken. So in terms of this, there is one function going downwards, one function going upwards. And that point, as I believe, has already been crossed.
Right.
Now,
And
in terms of
I think Shantanu tweeted this yesterday with a picture with Yogi Adityanath, saying that Yogi ji had promised that in the next 5 years, UP will become $1 trillion economy. What are the challenges ahead, and do you think this can be a reality if UP tries hard?
So I really want to mention a little about this development here. So you will see that before the elections, one standard pakhand essentially that happens in India is that people go around and they start laying foundations of stones of projects. But if you have noticed carefully, you will see that this time when Modi ji came all over Uttar Pradesh, he was not laying foundation stones. Yes, a few he laid, but maximum of the time he was inaugurating things. And one of the most important ones, if you go back to 2012 or 2013, you will see that in Bundelkhand, water riots were happening. Now, if you see Arjun Sahayak irrigation project, the problem of irrigation in Bundelkhand has been solved. Bundelkhand used to be the most water scarce region in India. And actually, I believe that in Uttar Pradesh election, by any chance, I don't believe it will be very close, but if it comes down to a Bihar style, nail-biting contest, Bundelkhand may have just 19 seats, but the fact that BJP is going to sweep Bundelkhand could make the complete difference. Now, again, there is another factor which is like Shantanu mentioned Labharthi. Along with Labharthi, and I think Monika also touched on this, there is another factor which I think will very strongly go in favor of BJP, which is the women factor. Now, because whenever the law and order situation really improves, one group of people who genuinely appreciate this is women voters. And this is not new for Modi ji. This has happened in Gujarat also. In Gujarat also, the fact that the BJP absolutely dominates the female vote is the real wind beneath BJP's wings. And if you see in Bihar, in fact, I would say the most interesting election we have had in the last 5 years is Bihar 2020. If you see in the first three, if you see the progression of the election through the 3 phases, in the first phase, BJP was wiped out. In the second phase, BJP ran close, just came a little ahead of RJD. And in the third phase, RJD was wiped out. What was that phenomenon? As soon as the news spread at the ground level that, Lalu's Jangal Raj is coming back, the female voter turnout in the third phase of the election was 11% more than the male turnout. So women came out in these fierce numbers and they just voted en masse against the RJD, which is actually, I think, one of the most unbelievable phenomena that I've seen in India's electoral history. And if you look at Akhilesh Yadav, even when he was doing rallies, you would notice a lot of people were coming, but 50% of the population was not there. And that 50% heavily, for obvious reasons, they heavily appreciate law and order. Now, I know you're running out of time, but I just want to mention one of the minus points that I've noticed in the Yogi administration. One of the things that I believe I was really surprised when I saw the data is that on the Jal Jeevan scheme, right? On that, Uttar Pradesh progress has not been good. If you look at a state like Bihar, 80% of Bihar now has tap water connection, but in Uttar Pradesh, it is still 22%, which when I saw the figure, I was genuinely surprised because, Uttar Pradesh is going for elections and I had expected a lot better performance on that score. But other than the tap water scheme, on the toilets and Awas Yojana, what is happening is people are actually getting money in their own accounts instead of, going through some begging some bureaucrat over there. And that really makes a huge difference to the mentality of people.
Right. I'm glad you brought this up because, Monika ji, there are 3 largely critical points with which the BJP is being attacked from different fronts. One is obviously connected to the Ganga River. People say that the river is not clean enough, or rather efforts are not being put enough to revitalize the Ganga River. Now, obviously, the BJP has attributed different reasons as to why this has not been as successful as it should have been by now, especially considering that the Prime Minister recently inaugurated Kashi Vishwanath Dham corridor. So this goes in parallel with what the BJP is also sort of trying to do, right? The second thing is obviously about the unemployment aspect as to what exactly the data may reflect is not necessarily what may reflect on the ground, because again, the data manipulation is completely possible, and in terms of what can be presented is also quite gullible in that sense. Thirdly, it's a factor of this communal identity being no longer there. Because if you remember Uttar Pradesh in a pre 2012 or even 14 scenario, it was always known for riots. So does that mean that the communal identity has slowly come down?
Uh, Sharon, I will take your second critical point first. So you're talking about that, data may not represent things as
Right.
they are on ground.
Yes.
What I don't understand really is that, in India, data is also very subjective. So, data-driven journalism or data-driven research is generally accepted all over the world. But whenever it comes to Uttar Pradesh and, the data related to Uttar Pradesh, there is a tendency within the critiques that they always have to question the validity of that data. The same data, giving you an example. When people are dying in Kerala, then suddenly, these critics start saying that, people are dying because Kerala government is so honest, so it's just putting every data, on the record. And when people are not dying, then they suddenly start congratulating the Kerala government and say that Kerala model is awesome. So what exactly is their problem with Uttar Pradesh? It shows nothing but their own bias, that whenever data supporting the Yogi administration or the BJP government comes in the public domain, they always have to question the validity of that data. So, just look at, even if I talk about the data that is coming from Uttar Pradesh, first of all, COVID pandemic has affected every state equally. And within that, just look at how many new businesses have started in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, forget it, look, go to Noida and just look at, so many new businesses have come up. Vivo, Oppo, or Samsung, all of these companies are, setting up their business in Uttar Pradesh. And most importantly, just talk to the youth in Uttar Pradesh. When law and order improves, all of us know that it's a given. Wherever law and order improves, the economy also starts taking off. Because as a business person, you do not want to put your money in a state which is not safe. So both of these things, they go hand in hand. So I think that answers your question. The second
It
critical
does,
point
it
that you
does.
talked about.
But if I may ask you a small follow-up, I agree that the pandemic has posed certain challenges, and I largely agree with what you have to say. But there has been a lot of critique as to how the Yogi government handled the second wave, and even from our quarters alone, it has been identified now and then. So my actual question is: do you think this will have an impact on the electoral politics in the elections that's coming up?
First of all, I don't agree with the criticism that Yogi government is receiving in terms of the handling of the COVID wave. I mean, just
Second
look at
wave,
India.
particularly.
Yeah, second wave particularly. Just look at which states were posting high number of cases. Look at the population of Uttar Pradesh and the potential of posting cases, and then look at Kerala and Maharashtra. I mean, Kerala and Maharashtra have been consistently posting, high mortality, people admitted in hospitals, so many problems with Kerala and Maharashtra, and all the states people are mentioning Uttar Pradesh. In fact, internationally, I have read so many interviews and so many other doctors are agreeing, and they are kind of finding it a miracle that how Uttar Pradesh, which is so populous, could control COVID, pandemic in its own territory, and how the second wave did not lead to as much damage as could have, led to. See, narrative setting is one thing. We definitely know that bodies are floating in Ganga. That was one narrative which was pushed. But then look at the truth of that narrative. Just examine it with objectivity. Research has proved that the bodies that were floating in Ganga, none of them were diagnosed with COVID. None of the dead bodies had any COVID symptom. And still, pick any person who reads news, pick anyone who's on social media, and they'll tell you, bodies were floating on Ganga because COVID happened. This kind of absolute lies and propaganda, this is something which can't stand true when it comes to objective assessment. As of your third critical point about communal identity going down, I think there's a need and supply problem. So I won't call it communal identity, but on ground, when it comes to law and order and your religious identity, both things are very important in Uttar Pradesh. So forget everything, just focus on Muzaffarnagar riots. And look at what happened in Muzaffarnagar riots. Jat women, they were regularly feeling very, very unsafe. And this movie, this person who made Anubhav Sinha, he made a movie on by twisting the entire true incident, and it was, I think, Yadavs who were responsible for it, but he gave it a very Brahmin sort of a spin to it. Just look at these cases. Your religious identity decides how safe are you going to feel. There was exodus of Hindu families from Muzaffarnagar. There was exodus of Hindu families from the entire western UP belt. And it's so I am not a communal person. I'm a very secular person. But if tomorrow someone threatens me by saying, "Oh, you're a Hindu woman, so you should face some sort of threat or violence," then obviously, if I defend myself, I'll have to use the same tools and weapons. So will that make me communal? No. Communalism started when the entire Muslim appeasement thing started. And trust me, Muslims and Hindus can coexist together on ground, but leaders have to pick their cards. If they are going to use insecurity card with the Muslims and they do violence in return, then obviously that it's going to make the world a much unsafer place. So I think it's a need and supply thing, and not sitting in New Delhi or Mumbai or all the metro cities. One needs to go on the ground and see how important religious identity becomes.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Unfortunately, we are running short of time. So, Shantanu can I ask for your closing comments, please?
Do you want to pose a question or generally?
Generally, in the sense that you can also tell about your recent interaction with Yogi ji in terms of what his vision for the next 5 years is, so that we have it on record, and then probably we can assess it a little bit.
Though, see, he was quite pressed for time because I met him early January and late December also when I was gifting him the book personally. The book reached him before also. So when I asked him, this term has went so well and I tried to document it, every bit of it in the 10 chapters, what will be the main task for the next term, right? What will be the next focus? And he said unequivocally, in fact, I even didn't expect the answer. He said, in Hindi, he said, whatever it takes to make UP a 1 trillion economy, right? So that is attempt. And I was like literally amazed for his clarity, which I was already amazed in all my meetings in the last 5 years. His clarity, his understanding, his thoroughness, which DM is doing what, which court case is moving against UP, which way, which pariyojana, which project is going which way. He has a complete control. He knows. In interviews, you must have seen, right? You can ask him some random court case that's happening UP government. He will tell you the whole history and say, no, you're misquoting me. Recently, the Lallan top guy was bruised by Yogi Adityanath. He said कि आपके यहाँ तो 9-10 पेपर लीक हुए हैं. उन्होंने बताइए कौन से 9-10 पेपर लीक हुए हैं. He said he was turning pages all of a sudden. He is known only for the lachedar language he used. Otherwise, there's not much of content, right? So then he said he was struggling for the pages that Saurabh Dwivedi guy. And he said, देखिए आपने इनको ये करा, ये पेपर लीक हुआ. योगी आदित्यनाथ नहीं, ये पेपर नहीं लीक हुआ था. ये तो कुछ और रीजन है, आपको पता ही नहीं है. As a one minute case of paper leaking with this guy misquoted in a normal interview, वो बच जाता, निकल जाता वो. You did not allow him to escape and told कि आप झूठ बोल रहे हैं. And then he said, okay. So he has a complete control in his government.
Right. Yeah. Anybody whose intention is to administer Uttar Pradesh very well needs to have a special skill set, especially if you're dealing with such a large state, with such a large population, and with such big social problems. Does require some sort of a special skill set to be present there. I agree. Abhishek ji, what is your take on what is going to happen in the upcoming elections? I know it's perhaps a little too early to predict the exact.
After the Bengal shock, I've stopped saying such things. But what I will say is, I feel at least that these elections are more than just a state election. And the point is that I feel the people of Uttar Pradesh understand that. If you see what is the model in recent years for how to stop BJP, it has been mostly to localize the election, right? That especially in the Hindi belt, the plan is you do not criticize PM Modi, you keep quiet. If you see Tejasvi Yadav did not open his mouth, Hemant Soren did not open his mouth. Hemant Soren said, "वो प्रधानमंत्री है, मैं उनके बारे में कुछ नहीं बोलूंगा." And so the plan is, because he is so popular, keep your mouth shut completely on PM Modi. You keep it down as low as possible, as like local, small, state level issues. But I think what happens in Uttar Pradesh is, because people of Uttar Pradesh know people also know this, that this is not just a state election. And Amit Shah said it very clearly. If BJP wants to win 2024, they have to win 2022. But the point is, everybody in Uttar Pradesh also knows this. Every voter in Uttar Pradesh knows that if BJP loses in Uttar Pradesh in 2002 on 10th March, if they lose, that is the end of Modi government. Every voter in UP also knows that. So it is impossible for Akhilesh Yadav. He is also facing a challenge. He cannot localize this election. He cannot make it a state election. He
Right.
has to say that, and when it comes down to a national level contest playing out in the Hindi heartland, at the moment, Modi is still so revered that, the point is, that's the whole point. I think that is where that's the tiebreaker. If it comes down to that, people will say that if in 2022 BJP loses on 10th March, Modi Sarkar is over, and people in Uttar Pradesh do not want Modi Sarkar to be over, and that will be the tiebreaker. That will probably keep the BJP definitely ahead of the competition.
Monika ji, do you agree with that? With what Abhishek ji is saying, that perhaps identity politics has taken a new turn, in the sense that the regional parties may not hold as much ground or relevance as they did earlier.
See, I partly do agree with Abhishek ji that things have changed because of a lot of number of factors. Exposure to technology, the demographic dividend, youth having their own priorities while voting. So definitely, identity politics has mellowed down on the ground. But this is just too early to say that, because 10th March only will tell us that how far the regional parties were able to hold on to their fifth terms and just make sure that the regional equations dominate the mind of the voters while they are voting. Whereas how much the UP voter is aware about his importance right now, especially that would be sort of a veto of 2024 fortunes of Narendra Modi. So I think that needs to, and in no time we'll know that.
Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me today for this conversation. It was lovely speaking to all of you. And of course, the elections are coming up, so we'll be inviting you time and again. And I hope you can take some time out to join us for these conversations.
Thank you, Sharad.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.